Okay, so we're going to do the scoring on the Caracal. Exactly like we did it back in 2021. 0 to 9 is less than average, 10 to 12 is average, 13 to 16 good, 17 18 excellent, 19 20 blew my socks off. In all the boats we reviewed, 20 something boats before, I think one, maybe two boats scored a 19 or a 20 in any of the 5 categories. And by the way, I'm not going to review contingency programs anymore because you can figure that out yourself if you're really concerned about how much money you can win fishing out of a boat. Overall scoring 0 to 45 less than average, 46 to 60 average, 61 to 80 good. That's where most of our boats, when we did the Great Bass Boat Search or Watch This Before You Buy a Boat review back in 2021, that's where most of the boats fail. Most of the boats are going to be better than that now because a lot of what we dinged boats for back then, whether it was not having C-deck flooring or not having a parking berth on the trailer, or just all the things are now available in boats that were not available back then. So I think you're going to see overall the scoring trend up. Let me say that another way. Not fair to judge the 2 boats that I'm going to do currently. Camera shut off there. The 2 boats that I'm going to do currently and the next boats I'm going to do, which is an Icon, a Falcon. Got a lot of boats coming. Not compare those boats to the boats we did in 2021. We'll do any boats you want us to look at. Just let us know, right? KenSmithFishing@outlook.com or comment below. 81 to 90 excellent. We had a couple of boats score that in the first review. And then 91 plus, it's not going to happen, right? There's just not a perfect, fast, great rough water handling, wide, great storage. It's just not out there. You can't make that boat, I don't think. So that's what we're going to review. We'll start with the fishability on the Caracal. So I love where the trim buttons are left and right. I don't like stacked buttons because I like to do it with my foot because I'm lazy, and a lot of times I get a fish on and I want to go get it over the top of something and I need to lift that motor in the back and I don't want to bend down and do it. So I want non-stacked trim buttons, and in this case they're on the port side. One button that you can do with your foot. I like that a lot. It's a clean front deck. It's got a good front deck width at 66 inches. So, and I say C next, so look at this slide right here. So that's kind of on the large end of what we saw before. It's, you know, the Lynx was bigger, the Skeeter was bigger, the Vexus was bigger, the Ranger 520L was bigger, a little bit bigger. Now, Icon we're going to review soon is much bigger, the way they've configured the front of that boat. But this has become more important because we're scoping. You guys are scoping. I'm scoping a little bit. I'm still regular little redneck fishing a lot too. But and you need, a lot of times if you're team fishing, you got 2 guys both on the front deck looking at those graphs. So I think that width, let me say it another way. I think we being boat manufacturers, which I'm not one, but we as an industry need to rethink how the front of those boats look. I don't care anymore about standing on the very, very front end of that boat. I need workspace, right? I need more space at the front of the boat. I've got a trolling motor pedal. I've got, according to what I'm running, I've got my up and down for my power poles or my Raptors or whatever I'm running up there. I might have a control for a turret system. I might have a control for crappie brakes or whatever you want to call them. I need more space up there and still be able to access the front of my boat when I'm getting in it by myself, because I fish by myself quite a bit. So I like having a lot of front deck space, and I need some space in front of me to put all of those things I use in my fishing up there on the front. So the 66 inches is good. It's not great, but it's better than a lot. Then at the back of the trolling motor, 57 inches. That's a measurement that we took actually in a video I'll post right there. I referenced it in one of the first 2 videos on the Caracal too. So this is video number 3. But there was, that's pretty good up there as well, because that's really where you stand, is right at the back of that trolling motor pedal. Normally my right foot or left foot, whichever one I'm running the trolling motor with, is slightly forward from the other foot. So that gives me a good sense of the width of that. Boat stability, I realize as I'm doing this edit that I forgot to put that in video 2, so let's jump back to some on the water footage right here. And here is the I hope I have this. If not, I'll just share it with you. But the boat's very stable from the list test we've always done on these boats. All right, let's do the list test in this boat. So we got a
We got our deal right there. Pull the motor down. We're standing all the way on the starboard front. Single console, 2-ish. Port side, the same. Let's turn around and do it from the back. So, starboard side standing on the rail, 3 degrees. Starboard side standing on the rail. Uh, 2.3 look like the highest reading. Okay, so those are solid numbers from the list test. Really nothing much over 3 degrees. So let's talk a little bit more about the interior of the boat.
Good gunnel height. And what I mean by that is, how far is the gunnel of the boat at the front above the deck of the boat, what you're standing on? And why that's important to me, although the coolest looking boats are the ones that it's tiny, where it just looks like a flat surface off the front of the boat. If you were fishing in any kind of trees, and a tree goes down the side of the boat and it's on top of that gunnel, if you've got a gunnel slightly higher than where your reels are or your rods are on the deck, you're way less likely to scrape a rod out of the boat. And also when you're opening rod boxes, you're less likely to dump rods in the boat. So I like a little bit more gunnel height there. This boat, the Puma, are all really similar. The Blazer, I remember, had one I liked. So those are all good gunnel heights on those boats, and we talk about that in all the prior videos. So adjustable fishing position, specifically what I mean there is with the Bass Cat, you can move the trolling motor way forward if you want to. I don't think very many guys are doing that anymore because of the graph setups and the way the style of fishing has morphed. But you can do that, and of course you got 2 seat holes up there, which I think options are good, right? Negatives from a fishability standpoint, it gets really tight up there. Now granted, I run ginormous electronics on the front deck. I run 2 stacked 18-inch NBTs, but it gets really tight up there. And I don't have a turret system. I do have power pull buttons up there. I would like to see more workspace in the front of this boat. Big step to the front deck. Again, the boat has a really deep cockpit, which personally I really like for running a boat. My Lynx had the same thing. I kind of fell for that style of boat. I remember my buddy Clay had a Gambler, and I loved how low you sat in that boat to be kind of out of the wind. But it's then a big step to the front deck off of an ice chest. So the only point of that is if you have mobility issues, this will be a more difficult boat for you to get up and down off the front deck. I'm saying that as a 63-year-old. Luckily, I still have my mobility, but some of us don't, and some of our young guys don't. So I'm going to continue griping about this next one until somebody changes it. The rod box is on the wrong damn side of the boat. All of us, every guy watching this video is in his boat by himself unless he has kids at least 40% of the time, if not 70 or 80% of the time. And so you're going to see in a video we do pretty soon a listing issue at low speed in boats. And that's because on the starboard side of bass boats, you have a console and you got a fat guy driving the boat. And you've got in front of the starboard or in front of the driver's console a box that's storage that we put a bunch of crap in, as opposed to the port side we put our rods in. Now, go measure them or go weigh them. A rod and a rod sock weighs 1.5 to 2.5 pounds. And if you got 40 of them over there, you got 80, 90 pounds of rods over there, you still have more crap on the right side. That doesn't even balance out the weight of a console. Rod boxes should be moved. I'm not dinging them for this. So you see I say no deduction, but I'm going to gripe about that until somebody changes that. This is purely because boat manufacturers, back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, Bassmaster limited boats to 150 horsepower outboards. So we all ran, because we all thought we were all going to be the next Kevin Van Dam. We all ran 18 and 19 foot boats with 150s on them. In those shorter boats, you didn't have space to lay a 7-foot rod if you ran a dual console on the port side or certainly not on the starboard side. So most of us ran single consoles, and your rods hung off the deck, and that's where you put the rod box, because that was the bigger option. If you look at a lot of the old boats, the port rod box was way longer than the starboard rod box. It's not the case anymore. We're all in 20-foot plus. Pretty much all of us are in 20-foot plus bass boats. That's where the rod box needs to be. On the starboard side, port side needs to be storage. And then lastly on this boat probably has a little bit less storage space than some other boats. And I'm going to talk about that in my next boat I review. There's a happy medium, right? There's enough and there's too much. And I'm going to review a boat pretty soon that's just too damn much. And I talked about in video 1, a lot of this has to do with how much of your tackle you carry, if you're a heavy tackle guy or a light tackle guy. This boat, I'm going to guess. No, I'm not going to guess. It certainly holds more tackle in the front than my Puma did. It will not carry as much tackle as my Lynx did. It certainly will not carry as much tackle as my Ranger 520 or 521 in the front center boxes. So a little bit less storage than some. We've already talked about this, but there's kind of the scoring for most all of the boats from the first review.
I kind of blew through this in the original edit, so I'm going to give you guys just a couple seconds to look at this. But, again, as I said early on, all of these boats that are still in manufacture would score better today because they've added amenities and they've made changes to the boat. So this is a fresh look at all boats. And again, we'll look at any boat you want us to look at. So I wanted to give you a little bit more time to look at that slide.
Talk about fit and finish. So Bass Cat still, to me, best in class carpet and glass. Do your research on that. They put higher weight carpet. They put more glass, better components in a boat, and you can feel it, see it when you look at one of these boats. Padded front deck, kind of the cost of admission at this point, right? Everybody has that. And because of that, the boats have a great solid feel when they run down the lake. When they land in rough water, they just have a great feel to them. This boat I reviewed doesn't have, but I know what the 2026 seats look like. I love the updated seats in the boat. This boat has great passenger space and more driver space than some of the bigger boats, specifically the Lynx and the Puma. I've done some measurements we'll talk about in a second, which we did in the second video, excuse me. And we will now document that I've thought that through going forward on all these boats review. It's got a big center live well. I like that. It helps with the sloshing. It makes the boat perform better, and it's super deep. It's better for fish. It's also a negative you'll see in just a second as well. If you remember back when we did the original reviews, we talked to 5 different fiberglass shops and said, what's your best, actually what we asked them was, what are the 3 best built boats in your opinion, and what are the worst? We've never said who they said the worst were, but all 5 mentioned Bass Cat, and 3 of the 5 said best built boats were Bass Cats. The main badging on a Bass Cat is above the rub rail, and that's important in a Phoenix or like an Icon where they have those raised below the rub rail badging or logos or whatever you want to call them. You will see if you fish Flat Creek at Palestine for 3 hours, you may not have those when you're done. So I really don't like that badging below the water line. Good big ice chest. Like the ice chest, you've got 2 options in this boat as well as my current or my last boat. You've got good latches, and you now have the option of the new latch that Bass Cat has finally perfected. And new to, since we did the reviews back in 2021, you can now get different reflex flooring options, either just in the cockpit or across the whole boat in Bass Cats. And I also said here, this spins out of a conversation I had with a buddy of mine, actually a fiberglass shop owner, Chris McLean. He owns Classic Fiberglass. And I said, and by the way, a fiberglass shop owner runs a Bass Cat. Coincidence? Probably not. But I made the comment to him, I've had 2 different Bass Cats over 4 years. I beat the crap out of them. Not the level that a pro does, but when I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere. Glassy, smooth, or 4-footers, I'm going there. I have never had a stress crack. You may, but I have never had a stress crack in one of my Bass Cats. And I can completely confidently say, 100%, I ran Skeeter, Ranger, Astro, Dynatrack, Hydrosport, something else. Every boat I've ever had prior to my two Bass Cats has had stress crack somewhere. I'm not saying a Bass Cat won't stress crack, but that tells me a lot about the fit and finish of the Bass Cat. Negatives: single divided live well. I really like having two separate live wells. Sorry, I had to jump away for a second. And I may be doing some of this over, but single divided live well, I really like having two live wells for several reasons. Number one, if I can just fill up one live well, that's less water I got to carry around all day. Number two, it gives me double systems. So if I got a live well fails, I got another live well. So to me, that's a little bit of a ding against the Bass Cat. And most boats run one big divided live well, but I prefer two. Carpet in several boxes. We talked about this ad nauseum in the earlier videos back in 2021. I like a finished box. They're cleaner, they're lighter. They may be a little noisier, I don't know, but the way Bass Cat boxes are made, I'm told that can't be changed. But if it were up to me, I would like all my boxes finished fiberglass with either C-deck flooring or that black rubber flooring you see in a lot of boxes. So, look, I'm not getting away from the dash pads, right? I hated them for years. They are way better. I've yet to have one fail in my Bass Cat in 4+ years. I will freely admit I don't fish in the rain nearly as much as I used to. But if you're buying a bass boat in 2026, you're getting a dash pad or an electronic touchscreen console. That's just the way it is. My boat I've just ordered is going to have both, so I'm going to have redundant systems because that's just the kind of geek I am. So fit and finish, 18 good. Okay, performance. So the boat's got spectacular lift. It's a dry ride. It's a good big water boat. It's got really good nose control. And I mentioned in video 2 I was going to talk about this. So this boat has, Rick Pierce of Bass Cat refers to it as bow rise. As I did my research on it, I think it's actually maybe called freeboard in most boating. And what it is this. It is the height of the deck, the fishing deck, if you will. And it's specific to what I'm thinking about here is the nose of the boat, that height versus the water line. So if this is the water line, if it's up here, that's a lot of bow rise. If it's down here, it's less bow rise. The Puma has, let me think this through. So the Lynx had a lot of bow rise, which was why that boat was so easy to control in trailing seas. Some of why some of the guys didn't like that was because it was so high when you're in rough water, you had to have a really long trolling motor shaft. So there's positive and negatives to all of this. But the Puma was about 5 inches more bow rise than the, and let's just refer from here forward to the Puma STS as the Lynx STS. It's the same hull. So it had about 5 more inches of bow rise. So it was truly easier to drive in big water than the Lynx or the Puma. I'm not saying they're hard to ride, but it was easier because you had 5 more inches of bow rise. And what that always made me think about in the Lynx was the Champion that you see here with nobody in it, which has spectacularly high bow rise. Not by design, and that's what's really interesting about the Champion. The Champion had so much bow rise because it was a narrower boat designed for those lighter motors. And when you started hanging bigger motors on them, it started lifting, the boat was out of balance. So it actually had more bow rise because of balance issues, not design issues, because the boat should sit largely level in the water when there's nobody in it. And you can see in this photo, that's not the case. But it's also why when you hung those big motors on the Champion, it was easy to drive in rough water because the nose stuck up in the air for you. So I had made a comment before I knew all of this about the difference in the bow rise. I knew I felt the difference in video 2 when I ran this boat, and I made a comment, it feels more like the Lynx. Well, the reason it feels more like the Lynx is it's got 3.5 inches more bow rise than the Puma I've been fishing out of. I like that. I like that, the feel of that in rough water. Honestly, if I was just fishing all the time and never ran anywhere, I'd like it lower. So I think it's a good mix here of the Puma and the old Lynx to be 3.5 inches. And I think it's also what allows you to run a little bit shorter boat, 20 foot 2 inches versus 20.5 or 21 or 21 plus, and get the performance and the dry ride out of the boat you get out of this particular boat. You saw the boat's got a great hole shot. It lands soft when you're, when you're banging through stuff. I didn't show you, but I ran out and created my own rough water, and then, ran circles, like 5 circles, and then ran back through the middle to feel how it handled when you hit those wakes. It lands soft. Super easy to drive. You saw me in video 2. I'm running one-handed, telling you my speed, 75 plus miles an hour. I'm running one-handed. It planed at just over 24 miles an hour, but absolutely no porpoising, and we know how important that is in rough water. This boat is a legitimate, excuse me guys, purely medicinal. This boat is a legitimate 75 plus mile an hour tournament loaded boat. And one of the other things I talked about in one of the early Bass Cat videos was Bass Cat historically had a little bit of side slop in it, especially when you had a quartering wind on you. And I had a fair amount of the Lynx. The STS hull has, to me, virtually eliminated that. The boat really doesn't walk around. Somebody once described, and this is 10 years ago, a Bass Cat's ride is never feeling like you're sitting still, because the back end was always walking around a little bit. You don't feel that in this boat. You don't feel that in the Puma or the Lynx either, or in the Jag anymore. And I did feel it in an earlier Jag, so something's changed in the Jag. I don't know what, but I felt it in the Jag 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't feel it in the Jag we just ran at the dealer meeting. Negatives, this is not a negative, but it's a 20 foot 2 inch boat. It's a shorter boat. And so just going forward, no, I'm going to review some shorter boats, some 18 and some 19 foot boats. And I'm going to review the performance based upon that size of the boat, not comparing it to the 21 foot 10 inch Icon I just came out of. I'm comparing it. I'm not dinging a boat because it's a short boat, because it's a short boat. You're buying a shorter boat. But as I have said many times, in big water on Toledo Bend, when you can't hide against a bank and the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour, I would always rather be in a 32 foot bass boat than in a 20 foot bass boat. The other thing I said, again, not as a negative, but just as a note to myself, I did not drive this boat in bad water. You saw that it was a pretty smooth day, but I've done enough of these to know that with the bow rise and with the ability to control the nose at slow speed, this boat's going to perform fine in rough water. So scoring from a performance standpoint is 18 excellent. And performance is not all about speed, and performance is not all about rough water. It's a combination of, and I think this particular Caracal is a great combination of a fast boat and a boat you can run big water in. And as I said in video 2, that's several $1,000s cheaper than a lot of other 20 foot bass boats. It's a way to buy more boat. In this particular case, it's a used boat, so you could get a really good deal on it. Amenities, it's got the driver's cleat we've talked about, which those of you who don't lock a lot, you don't care about that. But if you're fishing Arkansas River, Mississippi River, the river in Shreveport, you need something that's really easy to tie off when you're in a lock going up and down. I like the driver's cleat a lot. It's good net storage. It's got rod strap options of the retractable or the old rubber scrunchy kinds, which some guys have. I love having 2 fuel tanks. You saw I screwed it up earlier. It's 54 gauge. It's 227s. It's got that really good tie-down system where you actually bolt the trolling motor batteries and the cranking batteries down in the back of the boat. It's the best I've seen. Great sump access. You open the lids and you just shift them and you can take them right off so you can get to it no matter whether it's on the trailer, whether it's in your boat stall, on a lift in your boat stall at your lake house. It's a great way to be able to access everything, lay down and really get down in there. The lid's completely out of your way. Good dash visibility. It's not hard to see over the dash. I talk a lot about the challenges of bass boats for big guys. Same issue if you're 5'6", right? You got to be able to see over the graphs and over the dash, and I think that's probably fine on this boat. Multiple prop and storage options in this boat. I've already talked about the split removable back deck lids. It's got that battery tender up front, so you can disconnect your trolling motor if you God forbid, have to replace your trolling motor during the day. Bam, bam, you don't take anything apart. All you got to do is get your electronics off of it and swap them out. You got your plug right there. It's got a great biological spot in the back, those little spots where you can stand back there in the middle of the day when you got to do things. It's got those little independent LED lights all over the boat. You push a button, you got light. Great lights also inside the boxes, all LED lights. It's got ventilated storage. You push a button, the fan ventilates all through the boat so you can dry the boat out. More driver space than the Puma or the Lynx. I really like the new seats, which were not on this boat, but I've seen them at the Bass Cat dealer meeting. Things that are new are these bolted items from when we did the review back in 21. You can now get a trailer brake, which you saw a parking brake, which you saw in this boat. It has that, so that's really nice if you travel a lot. You don't want to have to scotch your boat. You just pull the trailer brake, the parking brake. Reflex flooring options. Bass Cat didn't have that for a long time, but they found one they were really comfortable with. You can now get them in the cockpit or across the entire boat. Great new O-crap handles, right, on the sides of your seats, on both sides of both seats, drivers and passengers. So you've got one for the driver if he needs to, which he shouldn't. He should be holding the wheel, but then also center guy if you've got somebody riding in the middle, and then also on the passenger as well, so they're not having to hold on to that rail outside the boat. And then one of the things that I have missed the most as I've gotten older is remote drain plug option. I hate crawling up under a boat and putting that plug in. I think it was a $240 option, and it was the easiest $240 I've ever spent on my new boat I've ordered. So, knocks on amenities. The seats still don't slide forward and back. I would love to see that changed. Nothing terribly new or revolutionary on this boat, even from 21 to 24. Still no enclosed storage options for your charger to put your phone in. It is better. They've given that little mount that is just barely under the dash, and it is out of the rain unless the rain's blowing in from the back of the boat. So you can put your phone down there and plug your charger in right there. There was a time, if I remember right, that you actually had to have a radio to get that plug down there. That plug's now in all the Bass Cats. And then, as I said in an earlier part of this, and this is where I actually graded it, there could be more space on the front of these boats for electronics and still allow you access into the boat. I'm going to show you a boat in a few days or a week or two here where I think it's a better setup than this boat in the front of the boat for your electronics and still give you workspace. That's the only way I can describe it. It's workspace up there. So amenities scores a 17 on this boat. I think that's probably the same score we scored the Puma on this boat. The Puma on the scoring. And then trailers and other stuff. The boat has trailer steps. I'll come back to that. The boat has a really good winch and jack. The Fulton, the boat I just reviewed, I hate the winch on it, and I'll talk about that. Not the winch, I hate the jack on it. It's got a swing away tongue. That's price of admission. All these boats have swing away tongues now. It's got a really good looking fiberglass trailer. I've talked about this before. When we went from a Ranger to a Bass Cat, the first thing Sarah commented on was not, ooh, this is a pretty boat. She said, wow, this boat's way easier to step into. And it is. It's got multiple step options in the fender to crawl in the boat. And when you have kids or a spouse or a friend who has a hard time getting in and out of stuff, that's really, really important. One of the things I do like that they've done now is as we talked about at the dealer meeting video, there's now a metal trailer option. So if you travel a lot or you don't want the possibility of blowing out a tire or hitting something and tearing up a fiberglass fender. There's now a different trailer available on all Bass Cat boats. So if you're a metal trailer guy, you can get one. Got great LED backup lights. The boat pulls really well on the trailer, and it's quiet. And as I said earlier, there's now a parking brake option on the boat. Negatives, and that's why I said see negatives on trailer steps. So in the original videos we did, not every boat manufacturer offered trailer steps. Bass Cat did. Look, I run a Bass Cat. Bass Cat steps are crap. They are. It is a Cirque du Soleil act to climb into my boat. Now, granted, I got a lot of electronics up there, but I have to step up on that and step on the right side, which would be the port side, outside the trolling motor. I put a strip of grip tape over there to climb in the boat. I am 63 years old. If you're 22 and watching this, you don't care. If you're 50 plus and watching this and you fish by yourself at all, it is really hard to crawl in this boat from the trailer steps on this boat. So much so that my next boat, the boat I've ordered, I'm going to buy a set of aftermarket steps to bring me in the side of the boat. So I scored the Puma, which is exactly the same setup, an 18 for trailer and other stuff. I've gone back now because although trailer steps were new and unique or not as common back then, they're on everything now, and Bass Cat needs to up their game on their trailer steps. So I dinged it 1 point, and you'll see in a minute I went back and I rescored the Puma 1 point lower because that needs to be fixed. I also talked about I still would love to see, and I didn't ding them for this, but more ability to go on the Bass Cat website and look at all the options available to you. And there's a lot of boat manufacturers that allow you to do that. Bass Cat still does to do that. And look, I get it. As I said before, I would rather, if I'm selling boats, I would rather you call a salesman and talk to, or call a dealer and talk to them about what options you can get in a boat. But as a consumer, I want to go online and play with it. And there's several boat manufacturers that don't do that. That do that. And then the last thing, and this is something I probably should have said about the Puma as well, and another reason why I went back and lowered the Puma 1 point. Bass Cat trailer does not like a steep ramp. It will, a lot of times, the eye will jump over the ball on the front of the trailer, and I've actually experienced that in a couple of other boats as well. But if you have a steep ramp, sometimes it's hard to trail. Now, look, if it's a normal ramp, it's really easy in a Bass Cat, right? You put the back wheels of your trailer completely underwater. You leave about that much of the front fender out of the water. It'll drive up. It'll center itself. Bam, you're locked in. You can go. But if it gets steeper than that, it gets trickier. And specifically the ramp at 69 on Ray Hubbard. It's a steep ramp. It's a pain sometimes to get this boat on the trailer. So I dinged it overall 1 point in trailers and other stuff. Below what I had done it before, and I went back and changed the same for the Puma. So it scores 17, still excellent because it's a beautiful, perfectly performing trailer. I didn't talk about this much at all, but it's a channel iron. I think that's the correct term, trailer. Well, we'll talk about that in a future video. So 17 excellent. That scores the Bass Cat Caracal an 86 excellent. It's not the highest scoring boat ever, but it's a really good positive scoring boat. I don't think I talked about it earlier, but let me make sure I get this right. I think we scored, I had to go back and look, but I think we scored the Puma 17 in fishability, and we dropped it 1 point just because it's a little bit smaller front deck and a couple of other things, but still a really, really good score. But again, as I said before, as we go forward, a lot of these boats are going to score higher, but there is absolutely nothing wrong. I would fish out of a Caracal in a second. I said it in the video one. Kelly Jordan can fish out of, he's a lifetime tournament fisherman. He's part owner of Major League Fishing. Dude could fish out of whatever he wants to. And this is the boat he chooses to fish out of. So there's the first two boat reviews for the 25-26. Although I did the Puma a few years ago, I had already done it. So you see it's 20'7" versus 20'2". It's almost 200 pounds heavier. Same beam, a little wider at the front deck seat. a little wider at the back of the trolling motor. I did not measure the seat height, which we did in that first video. I'll be real curious as we go forward measuring that. Back of seat to dash, again, kind of measuring for big dudes how much it is to fit in there. Thank you so much. One of my viewers actually said, man, it'd be really nice to have the measurement to put this boat in storage, because a lot of guys are storing at their house. So the storage length with the trailer open, if you will, so not folded back, on the Puma is 26 feet 8 inches. On the Caracal is 26 feet 8 inches. Trimmed down, front of the trailer folded in. On the Puma's 2311, 23.4 on the Caracal. As you see, the 87, I've already talked about, I deducted it. It was an 88, so it is still the highest scoring boat at 87, but it's not as high scoring as it was a year ago or 2 years ago when I did that review. And then the Caracal's 86. So next up, Icon 1 and Icon 2. Behind that will be, and by the way, we will get to the links eventually. They're hard to find right now. And then there will be, I think Falcon will probably be the next boat, one of the Predator series. And then I got a couple of other boats lined up as well. So I hope that is enjoyable. I hope that's interesting. I hope that's helpful. Again, thank you so much. If you don't subscribe, please click that subscribe button. Please give me a like. You don't realize how much the great algorithm in the sky shares my videos with you when you click the like button. And those are appreciated. As always, shopping on Tackle Warehouse with the link in the description below is much appreciated. They support the channel. And using Ken 10 at 6 Cents Fishing or Ken 15 at Waterland, you need glasses. That's appreciated too, guys. So thanks. I'm having a good time. This was fun to do again. And I look forward to doing more videos for you guys in the near future. See you soon.